And I asked for still for 2.5 minutes. By all means. Stand by. I really love it. Come in without the glasses.
I was gonna say, I know what you're gonna say.
I was like, oh, that's all right. We can discuss some other stuff.
Did you finish reading my opus?
Mostly, yeah.
Most?
Yes.
Did you ever get a copy?
Yeah.
Read it,
I did.
opinion?
Opinion?
Yeah.
My opinion?
Yes,
No, I don't have one, I'm sorry. At this time, I don't have one.
but it's pretty neutral.
Mhm.
I don't believe he's read a copy of it.
I got one.
I gave him one this morning. And Drew, I don't think Drew has a copy.
Yeah, I got one. Yeah, I think it
You
did.
got a copy of this?
Yeah.
Jimmy is gonna be late, so, but Jimmy has not been here, so he can know about it.
Well, I had to shut down the process. Like, be here on time. Gonna go back to Winston when I get through. I run a company. That opus magnum I wrote is stuff that I have accumulated over the last 60 years since I got out of the service. Read some, probably 1,000 books on the histories going back to the Magna Carta, which was the first attempt at creating systems protected. It was only done to protect the barons.
You might wanna repeat that for Mr. Comer.
But that opus magnum, you read it?
I did.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I don't share many opinions.
Why?
That was my answer.
Disagreements down, fine.
There are no disagreement. I will tell you this, it's what I accumulated over the last 60 years since I got out of the service. Reading probably some 1,000 books on this thing going back to the Magna Carta.
Thank
History.
That's okay.
It was interesting. It certainly,
Dwayne, if you will just let
and I
me.
appreciate it.
Right here.
It says exactly what's happening.
Thank you, sir.
I appreciate it.
That'll be good. Thank you, Dwayne.
We're good. Okay. Okay, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the room to order. Today is Monday, September the 16th, 2024. Time is 11:06 a.m. I call this preliminary hearing for the voter challenge of James Roy Armbrister, address listed in Surrey County Board of Elections voter registration as 1537 West Devon Drive, Mount Airy, North Carolina, 27030, to order. This challenge was filed and notarized in the Surrey County Board of Elections office on September the 10th, 2024 by Joseph Thomas Zalznick, a Surrey County voter registered in the Mount Airy Precinct Number 1. I note that there is a quorum present, a bipartisan Surrey County Board of Elections members. Present are Drew Dexter, Secretary. Clark Comer is across from me. Paul Field, and I am Dwayne Carter, Chairman. Our Director of Elections, Michelle Huff, is seated to my right. Deputy Director Sidney Romaine is out of camera over to my left. Our attorney for the Surrey County Board of Elections, Mr. Mark Payne, also is to my right. This is a quasi-judicial hearing conducted by the Surrey County Board of Elections, the definition of which is of, relating to, or being an administrative act, body, or procedure that is concerned with the adjudication of specific rights and obligations rather than the promulgation of rules that require discretion and decision, and that may be subject to a notice of hearing requirements and judicial review. The proceeding of today's hearings being audio recorded and video recorded per North Carolina state law. All questions and comments should be directed to the board. The only issue before this board today is whether there is probable cause under the provisions of General Statute 163-85, paragraph D, to call for a full hearing on this challenge under the provisions of General Statute 163-86. Today, the burden of proof on such probable cause is on the challenger, Mr. Zalskit, on this matter. Under the law, he is the only person who can present testimony and evidence at this preliminary hearing. I refer in this matter the statutes dealing with pre-election challenges, which are referenced General Statute 163-85, 163-90.1.2, and .3. All testimony in this matter will be under oath as required by General Statute 163-90.3. Any intentional false testimony, affidavit, or evidence may be treated as perjury, which is a North Carolina Class 1 felony. I instruct the challenger not to leave this hearing room today until dismissed by this board or by the director. There may or may not be items to be discussed with you for calendaring a full hearing. This board is hearing this challenge with an open mind and will base its decision on the testimony and evidence presented before it. Therefore, we have no opinion on the merits of this challenge at this time and will not entertain questions along those lines. I shall now read and enter into the record challenge law as provided by North Carolina General Statute 163-85, paragraphs C and D. Challenge proceeding other than on the day of primary or election, an abbreviation. Paragraph C, grounds for challenge. Such challenge may be made only for one or more of the following reasons. Subparagraph C, 3, that this person is not a resident of the precinct in which the person is registered, provided that no such challenge may be made if the person removed his residency at the period of removal and has been less than 30 days. Paragraph D, preliminary hearing. When a challenge is made, the County Board of Elections shall schedule a preliminary hearing on the challenge and shall take such testimony under oath and receive such other evidence proffered by the challenger as may be offered. The burden of proof shall be on the challenger, and if no testimony is presented, the board shall dismiss the challenge. If the challenger presents evidence, and if the board finds that probable cause exists that the person challenged is not qualified to vote, then the board shall schedule a hearing on the challenge. I'll read the challenge given by Mr. Joseph T. Zalskit. Presented on the voter challenge form, North Carolina, County of Surrey. To Surrey County Board of Elections, I, Joseph T. Zalskit, the undersigned, certify the following: that I am a registered voter in Mount Airy number 1, precinct, Surrey County, state of North Carolina. My residence is 1541 West Devon Drive, Mount Airy, North Carolina, and list the phone number. I hereby challenge the voter registration of James Roy Armbrister, who is registered to vote at 1537 West Devon Drive, Mount Airy, North Carolina. I challenge the above named voter for the reasons checked below. Check the block for the person is not a resident of the precinct in which the person is registered. And Mr. Zalskit swears or affirms that this is his evidence and was presented, and notarized in the office of County Board of Election. Joseph, this time, I will swear you in, sir. If you'd like to just come to the end of the table, you can put your stuff there at the end. Do you swear or affirm that the evidence that you shall give to the Surrey County Board of Elections for this hearing, wherein Mr. Joseph T. Zalskik is challenger and Mr. James Roy Armbrister is the challenged voter in Surrey County, shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
You may present
Thank you.
your evidence, sir.
So, I'm a resident of 1541 West Devon Drive, which abuts, the property of 1537 West Devon Drive. My wife and I moved to Mount Airy 5 years ago in August of 2019. And our neighbor, James Herbert Armbrister, passed away on October 7th, 2019. And during the month of November 2019, the residence of 1537 West Devon Drive was vacated or abandoned. James Roy Armbrister, Marshall Lee Armbrister, and their mother, Sarah Marshall, lived at 1537 West Devon Drive until November of 2019 and never returned to that residence. The home remained vacant until November 16th, 2020, when it was purchased by David Brandon Johnson and his wife Teddy Sue Johnson of Mount Airy. Mr. Johnson and his wife renovated the home, removed all contents of the home. A trailer was removed, a shed was removed, and all contents were taken away from the previous residence. They, like I said, they renovated. They then sold the home at 1537 West Devon Drive on May 12th, 2021 to Eagle Ridge Properties, North Carolina LLC. And that company has since rented that home to Mr. Luis Hernandez, who is a contractor for Eagle Carports. Mr. Hernandez has lived at that residence for more than a year. My challenge is that James Roy Armbrister did not live at 1537 West Devon Drive on July 11th, 2022, when he registered to vote. I'm challenging this voter because, in my opinion, based on the facts and the deeds that are presented in the challenge, that Mr. Armbrister did not live at that address at the time of his registration. I don't know the date of birth for Mr. Armbrister, but I'm assuming, and this is only my opinion, that he did a motor voter registration. Because when I knew him, he was about 15 years old. So it would make sense to me that when he turned 18, that his driver's license automatically registered him. I don't have any paperwork as far as how he registered to vote. But I know that he was not at that residence on 7/11/22. He was not living in the basement. He was not living on that property. And how I came to find this was I am a candidate for Surrey County Soil and Water Conservation District Supervisor, and I requested a walking list from Sydney, and she responded very quickly. And, you know, when I looked at that initially, I thought that James Roy Armbrister was Jim Armbrister, who passed away at the age of 62. And I said, well, and I emailed Sydney and I said, I think, you know, this person has passed away. And then she emailed back and said, based on the age, it's probably his son. So Jim Armbrister was a city commissioner in Mount Airy, previous sheriff. I never met him because he was in hospice when we moved in. And just looking at the walking list, you know, it just, came up. I looked at my address, make sure that our names were correct. And I had never noticed it before. I ran for office in 2022. And if I had a walking list that I noticed back then, you know, maybe I would have challenged it 2 years ago. But at this point, 2024, there's just no way that this individual resides at that address. I don't know where he lives. I don't know what state they live in. I tried to do a search. I got an old Facebook page from when they lived in Mount. But I have no knowledge of where James Roy Armbruster lives. That's pretty much it. That, you know, I'm going by the deeds that were supplied to me by Todd Harris's office, that the home sold twice and over the last 5 years. And that's really all I have. The obituary and the sale of the home twice.
Thank you. The board will accept also the underlying documents besides the voter challenge form that you did file and give copies to the Board of Elections. All board members have the information, most of the information, probably more of the information than you actually provided testimony for to supplement any decisions or future action.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just want to remind the board, there's 2 items in that packet from the very back, the last 2 sheets. Those items was added by myself, not Mr. Zalesky. And that is the registration of Mr. Armbruster and our view and voter view showing when he was a new voter. I just want to remind the board, we cannot, that's not a public record of the method of voting, the method of registration that this voter, that's not public record. So for the board just to have that, just know that's not public record. And I will let the board know that Mr. Armbruster, that is in question here, did not pre-register at the DMV. So his first registration was at age 18.
So
Which would have been July of 2022.
the underlying documents that we have in our packet, with the exception of the 2 of the 2 last sheets that were given supplement by the director, can be accepted in as evidence. Mr. Attorney?
Yes, I take it from what you're saying that the board is going to accept those last 2 documents. It's going to take judicial notice of those last 2 documents as public record, as records of the election department, which you can do.
Thank you.
And when you say this did not pre-register, if you will explain what you.
Yes, a lot of times, you know, when they get their license at 16, they'll go ahead and pre-register at the DMV. That did not occur.
For the full board.
Correct. Yes, and that last sheet that you see there, that is a screenshot that shows he had no prior activity before 7/12/22.
Right.
These last 2 sheets that you say they are not public record, do you wish to have those returned back to your office?
At the end of the hearing, that would be fantastic. Yes.
Where did he, do you know where he registered?
I do, and you do right there. Look at the top left corner.
And for clarification of the record, this board, because these are records of election records in your Board of Elections, you can take judicial notice of them, whether they are public records or not.
We can take them into account.
Yes.
But we don't need to carry them outside the
Correct.
confines of the office.
Filled with information, I think we do need to know.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
So there's no current address for being Roy Armbruster.
He's currently registered, active at the address that the challenger filed the challenge on.
He obviously is not there.
He is obvious. That's why they're hearing.
That's why I'm challenging.
That's the procedure for that. Thank you for your evidence. Is there any further closing statement that you would like to make in supplement of the evidence that you have given? It's
Well, I would just like to thank this board for their diligence and how you operate. Like I said, even at your last meeting, I appreciate all the hard work that this board does. And you're very transparent in what you do. And as a resident and as a registered voter and as a candidate, when I see something, I say something. And, you know, unfortunately, this individual registered to vote at a home he does not live in, so. That's pretty much all I have.
okay.
There's a question.
Thank you. Board members. At this time, we may ask questions of the challenger for any evidence that has been presented or testimony offered by him. I'll start with our senior board member, Mr. Poindexter. Do you have any questions, sir?
You have any idea where he resides?
The only person that came back to that home was Jim Armbruster's sister. She lives in Florida. They came up just to check the house out. They didn't go inside of it. I mean, when I'm talking about abandoning and leaving a home, they left like everything in that house. And I don't even think Mr. Armbruster's sister knew where the family went to. Because the school buses showed up that November, and I went out and told the bus driver that, you know, they're gone. You know, they just left them.
Any further questions, Mr. Poindexter?
Thank you.
Mr. Coleman?
Yeah, I knew Jim. Yes, I knew Mr. Arm.
The father.
Yeah, deceased. Just trying to think. Might have happened to the family. That's a mystery. Given it, it's one of those things you don't give any thought to, I suppose. After the fact like that, not seen them there at all. And you live right next door.
Right, there's no fence between the property. I've always, my wife and I always kept an eye on it because nobody was in there. We're concerned about, you know, anybody trying to break in or a pipe break. But it went into foreclosure. There were a number of liens on the home. It went up for sale, and actually Brandon Johnson, who was a sheriff here,
Right.
he bought the house the first one. But there was nothing, you know, family photos and all that was left behind, and didn't know where to send them. There was no evidence of any forwarding address, as far as we.
Thank you.
Field?
I have a question. Has anybody checked to see if there's a criminal record?
I don't have that ability. I mean, I didn't.
Has anybody? Because if there was a criminal record, that would mean the abandonment of the property was done in haste. It sounds like it was done in haste.
I mean, when you look through the foreclosure notices, there were a number of mortgages that was in default. So. Financially,
Thank you.
I bet if there was a criminal case, it probably wouldn't happen until after his father died, because his father was a policeman.
That's exactly what I was.
Incredibly respected.
Yes, sir, very much.
Are there any further questions from the board at this time? Okay, board members, we've heard the evidence this morning. It's time for us to deliberate. And we can have at this time comments and discussion among the board members as present. And after that is concluded, we have two decisions that we can make. So any discussion among the board?
Maybe we ask our attorney the, what, is anything different about this one compared to the one that we had that federal laws told us we couldn't?
The fact situation is a little different, but your process isn't any different at all. As your chair noted, you start, this is a preliminary hearing, and the burden of proof is the language that's used in the statute is that the challenge is sustained if there is affirmative proof presented. Affirmative proof is that the election statute is the only place that uses that particular phrase. What is the courts have determined it is equivalent to a probable cause. So if you think there is enough evidence to warrant further review, then I think that has reached the burden for the preliminary hearing. So that's the question in front of you. Is there affirmative proof that warrants a full hearing? You know, what you're doing right here is the preliminary hearing to determine if there's enough proof to go forward for a full hearing, which has a slightly different standard of proof when that occurs.
Would the fact that the property had been sold multiple times indicate there's a man is no longer
But
a legal resident there?
you have evidence, one, that the property has been sold a number of times. You have evidence of an eyewitness saying that the property was abandoned for a period of time, and somebody who's asserted that he would be familiar with the family if they did return, and that the people that are living, and that the person that's living in that house is not Mr. Armbruster. So yes, there is evidence here, and I can't tell you if that reaches the burden or not, but that's the evidence that you're determining if that hits the mark of affirmative proof to warrant a further hearing.
Well, I was asking, is this similar to the one that we went through before where we had the hearing and we found out we could not do anything because of a federal statute? Is this similar or dissimilar?
Well, if you go through with the full hearing, and you feel you've got two options at that point, you either don't strike the voter registration, or you do strike the voter registration. You've got a fact determination to make, which is a little bit different from the other hearing where there weren't any question about the facts. It was just a simple application of law. This time you've got to make a factual determination as to whether or not Mr. Armbruster lives there or not. It has residency within the definition of election law statutes, which is a fairly, residency is there's a lot of law on what residency is.
I'm getting confused. The one I was thinking about, the gentleman voted and then a man challenged.
I think this was clean.
This is
Yeah,
voter registration.
this one,
Yeah,
this is not.
this is not.
He lives there, he doesn't live there.
Yeah.
That's what this.
Yeah, there's not a challenge at the ballot. So I think I might have misunderstood your question at first. Yeah. Yeah, this isn't a ballot challenge. This is a voter registration challenge.
I think it's just that he either lives there or doesn't live there, and we'll leave the fine preliminary, that we move it on to a full hearing. And then he'll be notified or attempt to be notified, and then he has the right to come in and prove that he does.
If I could ask the indulgence of the board for 30 seconds. I'm gonna be off camera. I'm gonna speak to Sydney for just a moment. Just please hold up just a moment. Thank you, board. I spoke to our deputy director and it had nothing to do with this challenge at this point in time, off camera. It had nothing to do with that. So is there any further discussion among the board?
I will add also that I did mail the James Roy Armbruster a notice of this preliminary hearing to the PO box that we have on file with his voter registration.
When did you send that letter out?
I sent it Friday, next day air.
Thank you.
And there's been no response or no return
No, sir.
or no answer to it.
You sent it to an address you had for him.
PO box. He had a different mailing address on his voter registration.
Address that he provided.
Correct. And it is actually on that, the mailing address is on one of your pieces of paper from me.
Board, at this time, we can take a vote, and that vote would be either to for a motion to sustain and find probable cause for a full hearing, or to find against a probable cause to have a full hearing. I would entertain motions at this time.
Mr. Chairman, based on the weight of the evidence provided, I would make a motion that we find probable cause to move to a full hearing on this child.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to find probable cause on this hearing before us today. Is there any further discussion on the motion and the second? If not, I would call for a vote. All those in favor for probable cause for a full hearing, please say aye. Aye. The vote is unanimous for the members present. If the vote is to sustain a probable cause hearing, General Statute 163-86 is applicable. Hearing on a challenge, in abbreviation, paragraph B, at least 10 days prior to the hearing scheduled under General Statute 163-86, parenthesis C, the Board of Elections shall mail by first-class mail a written notice of the challenge to the challenged voter to the address of the voter listed in the registration records of the county. The notice shall state succinctly that the grounds asserted and state that the time and place of the hearing. If the hearing is to be held at the polls, the notice shall state the fact and shall list the date and the next scheduled election, the location of the voter's polling place, and the time the polls will be open. A copy of this notice shall be sent to the person making the challenge and to the chairman of each political party in the county. Paragraph C, at the time and place set for the hearing on the challenge entered prior to the date of the primary or election, the County Board of Elections shall explain to the challenged registrant the qualifications of registering and voting in this state. The board, in conducting hearings on challenges, shall have the authority to subpoena any witness it may deem appropriate. Are there any subpoenas that any of the board members or the challenger feels necessary to have at the challenge hearing? Okay. We would also engage discussion with the director on a future date to hold a full challenge hearing.
Is there a statute telling us what date must be by?
There's a timeline on it. I was just looking for that. Before the date of the next primary or election. And, the notice has to be mailed at least 10 days prior to the hearing. So you've got to wait at least 10 days after the hearing. So you have to set it sometime, 10 days plus mailing time from now and before the next election.
Wait a minute. You said we have to wait 10 days before we mail?
No, you have to mail it hopefully as soon as possible. And then, but you can't have your hearing until 10 days after the mailing.
Yeah, that's the mail.
Yeah,
And the
so the
mailing-
hearing needs to be at least 10 days plus from now.
So if tomorrow it was mailed out 10 days from tomorrow,
Perfect, yeah.
Would be the earliest.
be the earliest. we will
Yeah.
do it.
Okay. You have a comment, Madam Director?
Honestly, that's gonna put us at October the 1st would be. There's no way we could do the 27th of September because that's election day poll worker training that morning. So we cannot do the 30th because that's LNA testing. So the 1st, and the 1st is actually it's held in case we do not get finished with LNA testing. So what does the second?
The first is already the first absentee for me.
No, yeah, that's true.
Let me ask the question, is that? Would it? Due to the delay in getting out, well, the delay in the absentee ballots going out, that's not,
It's not helping.
I don't, well, what I start to say though, could we coincide it with an absentee board meeting? And just have that challenge hearing perhaps an hour earlier. And would that help you and staff?
I
Or
think,
would that create an additional burden? As opposed to having it on a separate day?
the absentee ballots are now gonna go out, the civilian are gonna go out on the 24th. We will probably have a ballot back by the 1st. If we don't have a ballot back, we will not have a meeting.
Then would
Okay.
October the 8th be a potential to try to schedule this? And because certainly we would have by then, I believe.
Mhm.
And that meeting is scheduled for 5 p.m. and move this hearing till 4 p.m. on
The 8th.
Tuesday, October the 8th. Or would that create an additional burden for you and your staff? Or would it be beneficial for you and your staff?
The 8th, would work. Mhm.
It's 3 weeks from tomorrow.
Mhm.
I'd like to ask our challenger, your calendar for, you're an important process, part of the process.
Pretty sure I don't have any doctor.
Might make for a long afternoon and evening. You don't,
We need to get ready for it.
yeah, it's gonna be a lot of
That would be
long
8th of
afternoon.
October at 4 p.m. instead of 5.
4
Well,
p.m.
4 for the hearing and 5 for the absentee meeting.
Right, right.
Well, I'm in the senior golf tournament at in Clemens, but I start at 9 o'clock. So if I don't lose too many golf balls,
Yeah,
I'll
right.
make it here by 4.
Hit them straight.
If you're as bad a golfer as I am, you'd still be there.
I'll be, it'll be fine. 4 o'clock will work.
So
Yes,
it helps y'all.
we will make that work.
Well, or would another day be better for y'all?
I just don't think we can do it any earlier than 4 because, if we are having our
I mean,
first.
I mean, a different day.
So we have a meeting on October 7th, October 2nd.
Yeah.
At 5 o'clock,
October 1st.
October 1st.
Mhm.
If we have any balance back.
But yeah, we might not have any ballots back to.
And that is already
But I mean, we
scheduled and
still
in our
do the
calendar.
Challenge hearing regardless,
That's at 5 o'clock. Right.
the absentee meeting.
October 1st.
Mhm. So we can schedule the challenge hearing whether we have ballots or not for October first.
It is in our calendar.
My thinking, Clark, is just getting the reports and the ballots ready for the absentee meeting. I just hope we can get all that done by 4 o'clock. That's the only thing I'm wondering, since the delay has been pushed back
I
with
mentioned it
absentee.
only as in the thoughts that it might be of benefit to you and your staff. If you think a different day would be better, I'm putting this on yours.
How does the first
you.
look for you?
That's clear.
The first is clear.
Paul, please.
I have something to say. I was in the service the first time I voted. I was at a secured secret place outside the country. I had to go through absentee ballot to vote in my first election, which was the Johnson Goldwater election. And it was quite simple. I mean, except getting the letter to home for the absentee ballot and getting the absentee ballot back. And you had to go through multiple handling because of the situation I was in base wise. Why has it become more and more prevalent that non-military personnel can apply for an absentee ballot other than the fact that business or in a hospital? Why is the average citizen now, anybody can get an absentee ballot?
Because North Carolina is a no excuse state.
Hmm?
North Carolina is a no excuse state.
No excuse state.
Mhm.
Well,
You
people.
might say that better than me.
But
That's
people
the same.
getting an absentee ballot under the no excuse. How do we regulate to make sure that those people getting these ballots are North Carolina residents and have a right to ballot?
There are many processes that you will learn about the absentee ballot request form and the fulfilling of a voter getting that absentee ballot.
So he has to have absolute proof that he has a right to that ballot.
If he has filled out a voter registration application, if he or she, and they are a registered voter, then they have the right to request an absentee ballot through an absentee ballot request form. If that form is fully fulfilled, then we do issue that absentee ballot to that voter.
Yeah,
And that's within the state law.
well, how do we know it's going to the right ballot? The ballot person is.
We're sending it to the address, the mailing address of the voter as they requested on the absentee ballot request form.
These are questions that we can entertain out of this hearing probably on a one-on-one basis. And so if we may resume the hearing.
Get a
If-
date.
Huh?
Get a date.
Yes, I think are we settled in on October the 8th as being the better day?
The first, I
The
think,
first being that we will be,
that would honestly just work better for staff,
Whatever
if
day
it works
best.
for the board
We already scheduled.
and
Yeah.
Mr. Talil.
we're tentatively scheduled for the first anyway, so October 1st will be the full hearing for the challenge of Mr. Armbrister.
At 4 p.m. Does that work
Yeah.
for everyone? Okay.
Is there any further questions to or from the board? This preliminary hearing called with due and timely notice, I will now call an adjournment to the meeting at 11:47 a.m. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You want these back now, Michelle?
Yes,
Left two.
have a little stack here, thank you.
Then he won't have to reprint.
Thank you. Well, if you want to
You know,
keep that much, and then if you want to give me these two, or you're welcome to keep these two. That way,
All my folks already given you.
okay, well, if
You
y'all
have
will,
fine.
that portion is for the board to keep. You can keep that one.
One of them there, Jesus is probably still got those.
Yes.
And being a preliminary hearing, you don't need a formal written order. You've done everything you need to do, including directing the director to send out the notes.
Okay. Well, some of those things we might have that are available for our eyes. But then after that, to carry them out in an unsecured situation that needs to stay within the board or stay within the elections office, I'd rather them be there than in my file.
Mr. Chairman, Jimmy said he should be here at 11:58. He is just text.
Okay, if you would like, we're probably 11:48 at this time in 10 minutes. Our other board member will be here, so if we'd like to take a 10 to 12 minute recess, we'll come back in order at hopefully 12 noon. Thank you. please. Sydney will open us up. All right. I'd like to open our meeting for September the 16th, full board meeting. It's 12:04 PM. Thank everyone for being here. We have a quorum. We have a bipartisan team. We have our full board members here. I'd like to read our conflict of interest statement as we do before every full board meeting starts. As the Surrey County Board of Elections, we have a duty to avoid conflicts or appearances of conflicts of interest. Does any board member have any known conflict or of interest or any appearance of a conflict with respect to any matters coming before our board today? If so, please identify the conflict or appearance of conflict and refrain from any participation in the particular matter. Thank you. We all have the minutes of August the 27th, our last meeting, before you for approval.
Just to point out to the board, I did put the 45 qualified signatures is what was needed for Mr. Sealy. You know, we had that conversation, and he did exceed that threshold of 59. So 45 was that minimum he had to have.
Thank you.
1%. And that's
Or their county. And there, that's, I didn't look at that.
So,
Yes, sir.
I won't make a motion second on the minutes because I wasn't here, obviously, but I just wanted on the top of the last page of the minutes, yeah. Toward the end of the last, of the first line, where it says thus, if that's supposed to be this. It's a spelling error.
Oh, right there. Yes, it is.
On what line?
Sorry.
What, third page?
Last page.
At the top.
Just a spelling error.
Yes, spelling error. And I corrected it on here, Dwayne, if you want this to be, oh, you got the
Oh,
copy.
this.
Yes, I've got the copy now. Drawn a line and put in this.
Thank you, clerk.
Based on that correction, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes as they read.
We have a motion. Thank you. We have a motion to approve the minutes from our August the 27th, 2024 meeting. Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion on the motion in the second? If not, all those in favor, please say aye. Motion carried. Minute for signature will be going around the table. And to be moving on a timetable. While the minutes are moving around, I'll open our public forum portion of our meeting. Is there anyone present that wishes to speak before the Surrey County Board of Elections, either here or online?
Video online. It's from Laura Hinkley, and she just, in the chat, she put many need absentee ballots. That's all she said.
It says what?
Many need absentee ballots.
Many needs. Okay,
And Laura Hinkley,
Yeah,
Okay.
HINCKLEY.
Many need singular absentee ballot.
Yes.
thank you. As noted, that is on a chat portion of the meeting minute of the online. If there's no further public discussion or any comments, I will close the public forum portion of our meeting and move to our other business. Madam Director.
did the board receive and read the numbered memo 2024-06? I think that was on Friday. It's all about the absentee ballot distribution. And I just wanted to let the board know that the Surrey County Board of Elections did have to, we already had all of the packets prepared. Well, not all, we lacked a few, 544 that we had printed and stuffed. So I just want the board to know that means each packet consists of 4 sheets of instructions. And I voted in the presidential election sticker, the exception form for photo ID, the ballot, and the transmission envelope, the large outer envelope, and 2 inner envelopes. And with that, 4 labels that we produce that go on. 3 of those labels have the CIB number. So everything with those 544, we have to reuse except for the instructions and the stickers, of course. So Friday, staff pulled everything out and separated. And what we did, we put the ballots back into the envelope that matches the voter. And we have put all of those in storage until we destroy everything from the primary or whenever that we can. There's no need to have to pay an extra fee just to have a shred truck come just for that, when we can have it done like we normally do. So we have put those in boxes in storage, and of course wrote on it, do not use, specifically on the boxes. So I just wanted to let the board know, and of course, that's roughly at, $9 a pop, with everything, with our time, with all the expenses. Yeah, so that's where we are. And we are going to start printing ballots, hopefully today. Good, yay. So we're going to be ready for the 24th, the deadline of the 24th. But with training and everything, we very well may be working, next weekend. But we will also meet this Friday's deadline for the UOCAVA. That's the 20th. That those will go out. So we will meet those as well. Of course, UOCAVA only makes up for about 8% of voters, I think, in North Carolina. But I just wanted to point out that the instructions in the number memo does say that we are to destroy the ballots, everything with Robert Kennedy Jr. on it. But it does say if you do not have the time or the means to destroy them at this time, you will need to keep them strictly separated from your new ballots and clearly labeled do not use. This is to avoid them being confused with your new ballots. So that's what we have done. So I just wanted to let the board know that, we feel that we can fulfill everything within this numbered memo. And I did link the ballot styles again this morning. So hopefully the state's going to run a test this afternoon, and this week you will be able to look at your ballot style. Specifically, if you look up on the voter lookup tool with the state board, then you should be able to click on your specific sample ballot. It just now shows you the ballot style, but you can't click on that. So once the state links those, but they're waiting for all 100 counties to link them at the county level.
You do that online.
And I did that this morning through Seams, of course,
So they're clear on the destruction of those ballots.
very clear.
No issue about retention of any of it.
No, and it does say that these ballots are not required to be retained for 22 months by federal law because they are not a record of paper relating to any application, registration, payment of poll tax, or other act required to voting in an election.
This is a result of Kennedy being removed.
Correct. Mhm.
So we've got how many $1,000 being destroyed?
We only have 534, but
Be destroyed.
that's a very low number to lots of counties.
Well, that's. yeah.
And that's only two because we do ballot on demand. We had pre-ordered our absentee, we would have had thousands. Yeah, that would have had to be destroyed.
So this situation is a strong validation for printing ballots on demand.
Yeah, it
And
does.
in this number memo, it does say too that counties with BOD might be called on to help smaller counties who are not able to get their delivery of ballots in time. So Surrey might be called on to print ballots for Yadkin somewhere. We don't know where,
Right.
but we very well may be called to do that for a neighboring county. And of course, I would let the board know that. If
And that would be a reimbursement by the other counties.
I would hope and think so. I'm sure the consumables for our BOD would not be, but the ballots themselves and the stock, I would hope, but there's been no, I'm sure that would be worked out if you're one of those counties.
See, I have a son that's very computer accurate
Mhm.
guy. And he said that a computer can be used to do the ballot. And ordered to print two copies, one for the county and one for the voter. On a 6-inch white sheet or 4-inch white sheet of tape running through on two things. You could actually vote by touchscreen. Cast your ballot. You get a copy of it for both the voter and the county would have a solid record of the vote. Incorruptible.
What state is this in?
No, this is my son, one of my sons, who's a computer
Mhm.
technology guy, he did a technology degree.
Mhm.
And he said, they spend all this money printing ballots and everything else, but they could do it on a tape, just like a cash register. You punch in your ballot, check your ballot, you cast it, and it has a double tape. One, and it cuts a vote, for the voter gets his copy, and the county, it rolls up on a permanent record, permanent tape. And he says, why haven't we gone to something that would save printing all the ballots?
Well, that changed in 2019 when North Carolina went to full paper ballot. We were like that when we were the Ivotronic.
But there wasn't a printed record after the electronic ballot was cast.
Yes, a printed record for the county
County,
it
but
was,
not for the voter.
and there will not be one for the voter.
Uh,
That's how North Carolina law does not allow for that.
No, you can't take a picture of how you
Mm-mm.
voted or can't do anything.
Well, there's a lawsuit.
I'm aware of the lawsuit, that's why I'm asking the question,
Yeah.
because, if somebody voted was cast and somehow it doesn't come out the way he voted it, he looks at it and says, whoa, wait a minute. It didn't vote the way I voted, it printed a different vote. There's no way to check it, once he's cast his ballot, there's no way for the voter to check that it was.
No, because once
Correctly
you have
cast.
voted, you have voted.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the paper that you're voting on, instead of
Paper.
the small cash register tape, you've got a full piece of paper that a person can be readily easy to see.
Yeah.
They might need reading glasses or a full set of glasses, but then it has to be a certain paper stock, a certain
Foam
thickness,
paper.
whether it goes into the ballot reader. That ballot is retained whether they've got that.
Okay,
Record
so
of the
they have a
ballot.
Paper ballot,
Oh, absolutely, for 22 months.
okay.
Mhm. And I think, well, I don't think, I believe the reason the law changed and they went to paper was so there is a record, a paper record. That can always,
What I'm saying. paper here, permanent record also.
Mm-hmm.
Chuck, one of the villages I grew up in, there were only 100 voters, and we had a crank voter. Yeah, that crank, they still do it today. The ballot is folded, put it in, and crank it, and it counts up one at a time. It's a small town in western Massachusetts.
We've come a long way.
Yeah.
Have we really?
Well, in some ways, yes.
And that's all I had for
Anything?
business, Mark.
I was gonna give you guys a very quick legal update. Last time we talked, which was just a few weeks ago, there were 2 lawsuits that had been filed against the state board of elections, not against any of the county board of elections. And gave you a heads up that they're out there. You know, the first one was talking about the error that was on the where the form didn't have the citizenship certification. And that lawsuit was expressed, the plaintiffs who were the National Republican Party and the state Republican Party, dissatisfaction with the fix that was the state board of elections prompted for that. The second loss, and that was filed just on the 23rd of August 23rd. The next lawsuit we have already talked about was the public records request from those same plaintiffs, basically asking if the state had complied with the state statute that says that any person who fills out a jury duty form and asserts that they are not a citizen and that's why they shouldn't be on a jury, that those forms and certifications be forwarded to the local boards of elections, and those who say that they're not and those forms checked against the voter records, and if there is a voter record of somebody who is registered to vote but has certified that they are not citizens on the jury duty form, that they be struck from the voter registrations. And we talked about how the state had in fact done a search and found that there were 8 persons across the state of North Carolina who had filled out the form saying that they were not citizens and so therefore shouldn't be on a jury, who would then be, and that those 8 citizens had all been sent to the local boards of elections, and that Surrey County did not have anybody who fit that category. And that was basically just a public records request.
Could I interrupt just a
Yeah.
moment? That process, the new state law, it's a new state law that was just went in effect July
In
1st.
effect, July 1, yes.
Our local clerk of court's office is complying with that,
Yes.
sending, if they was to have someone to stand and say, I'm not a citizen, but I've been called to jury duty.
If at today's today's gathering, if any of those folks that were supposed to be called for jury duty today filled out the form saying I'm not a citizen, so therefore I don't have to be on a jury, that document would be automatically sent to the elections department because of the agreement between elections department and the local clerk of court.
So on a local level, that is being
That-
carried
that's-
through.
Yeah, that's,
I can testify.
that process has been placed.
There is someone up there that has that information.
And what happened with the first submission by the clerk of court? They submit that to the state board, and then if the counties do not hear from the state board, then we know we did not have any. So I think the state alerts the county if there's someone.
Where did the county get the name for jury duty? I used to think it was voter registration.
That's one of the sources.
Hmm.
There's several sources.
DMV,
DMV records,
What about DSS?
Property owner?
there are other records, and I suppose I should know all of them, but there's like 4 or 5 things that are sent to, including prior service on jury duty.
So continue on. That was the
Okay.
second one.
So that's just a recap of the ones that one's filed on the 26th of August. Nothing has happened in either of those lawsuits, and it's really too early for, there's been nothing filed that I'm aware of in either of those lawsuits to try to accelerate the timetable. And the normal timetable is the State Board of Elections wouldn't even respond to that until at least 30 days after the filings. So we're not likely to hear any response on those things anytime soon. So I'll probably won't have anything to report on October 1st. I might, but I probably won't. There are 2 more lawsuits that have been filed since the last time we talked. One was filed on September 3rd. This had an individual, I think only one individual voter, and the same plaintiffs that were in these prior to, and it was again against the State Board of Elections, no local boards of elections, including you guys. And the basis of that was asking the court for a declaratory judgment, which is basically the court saying, this is what I think the law is on this topic. Some time ago, the State Board of Elections sent out one of those numbered memos saying, okay, this is what you do when you get a mail-in ballot. And it touched a couple things, but what was important to this lawsuit, it says, if you get a mail-in ballot, the mail-in ballot has a sealable return envelope, and it's in quotation mark, sealable return envelope is a specific thing that's part of the package. If that sealable return envelope is unsealed or looks like it has been sealed and the seal's been broken, but it's received by the State Board of Elections in a mailing envelope that's sealed. In other words, if you have to unseal the mailing envelope to pull out the ballot, and that ballot is unsealed, that's still acceptable ballot, and it can be processed like any ballot. And the reason, and that memo went on to say the reason for that is they're not calling that a deficiency. They're saying that if it were a deficiency, you would have to, like a deficiency, like something was not signed properly or not signed at all, or some other error like that, you have to return the ballot to the voter with a notice explaining the deficiency. Rather than a deficiency, the State Board of Elections says that is what is referred to as an anomaly, which is correctable. And so, in other legal terms, it would be, you consider it de minimis. It's something that's not a large enough error that constitutes a deficiency. It's just a something that can be corrected. That ruling of that memo, there was a challenge to that memo before the State Board of Elections. They, in effect, upheld their decision that, yes, we're going to call that an anomaly and not call that a deficiency, and say that those ballots have to be sent back. This is saying that is contrary to the statute that refers specifically to a sealed return envelope, not a return envelope in a sealed envelope. And so that was an error on the part of the State Board of Elections. And the lawsuit is asking the court to, one, find that that's an error of law, and two, order the State Board of Elections to correct the memo and to direct local boards of elections, if they get a unsealed return envelope, even if it's within a sealed mailing envelope, that they've got to call that a deficiency and return it to the voter.
When does that lawsuit?
That lawsuit was filed on the 3rd.
Okay,
Again, there's nothing that I've seen that seeks to accelerate a review process.
Hmm.
So you'll be getting ballots back
while
that's still before there's any answer to that
Mm.
challenge.
What they're saying is, each envelope, one can be sealed, one can be unsealed.
correct.
But
If
one of them is sealed and one of them is unsealed, it can still be called a ballot.
yes, if the unsealed one is inside a sealed return
Mhm.
mailing envelope,
But have they
That's
thought
okay.
about the sealed, the vote being sealed and the envelope is mailed in being unsealed?
No,
that's-
That's okay.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's right,
okay, 'cause
that's
the
right.
Ballot envelope is sealed.
What the lawsuit is saying is the return ballot has to be sealed.
One of them.
It doesn't matter if the inside one has to be sealed. It doesn't matter if it's in a sealed envelope or not.
The outer envelope.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So, now, one of the things that's interesting to me and probably not interesting to you is that, under normal circumstance, a court would kick this thing out because of a failure to exhaust administrative remedies. In other words, that's a thing that's a decision that the State Board of Elections did that could be appealed. You could just say, I think you're wrong, I want to appeal it. Right. And this didn't take that approach. They're asking for declaratory judgment. And the declaratory judgment language is
We'll have
What's
show and tell.
yeah, is not super specific as to whether or not failure to exhaust administrative remedies would apply or not. So that's kind of interesting whether or not the court's even going to say we can hear it or not. Because all of the declaratory judgment in this circumstance would be okay, according to the statute, where appropriate. Zero guidance as to what where appropriate means. So I don't know where that lawsuit's going to go. Again, without anything that accelerates the timetable, you guys are going to be approving ballots before there's any decision on this. And that goes to another thing that I'm going to talk about, which is probably reminding you guys of something that you already know. But people tend to think that the law is sort of static, that it's not written on, it's written on stone as much as paper. But all of these lawsuits today don't affect your life at all. They don't change anything, because the law that is on the table that is applicable right this minute is what is being challenged, but it hasn't been changed. And so yes, you do feel like you're kind of in limbo because you don't know what's going to happen in the future. And there are like 3 or 4 other lawsuits that are dangling over you that may change your whole life, but right this minute they haven't. So right now, you're going to keep doing your ballots exactly the way you've been doing them. And if the return ballot is unsealed, but it's in a sealed envelope, you are going to follow the memo and do it exactly that way. Now, who knows what's going to happen, depending on what the outcome of this case is, because those ballots are going to be approved and counted, probably by the time there's any decision at all on this sort of thing. Last lawsuit, is structured similarly. It is a challenge of a decision of the State Board of Elections that just happened a week or so ago. And it is, let's see when that was filed. That was filed on the 12th, but just a few days ago. And that was saying that the State Board of Elections decision to allow UNC University digital IDs to count as an ID. Now, it's my understanding, I could be wrong on this, that if you're at one of these universities that uses the digital ID, that is your only ID. You don't have a physical one at all. You only have the digital ID. And the State Board of Elections says, yes, you have to show an ID, and those IDs, the forms of those IDs have to be approved by the State Board of Elections, unless they're specifically, set forth in the statute. And actually, those have to be approved too. We're going to say that the digital ID issued by UNC counts as an ID. So if you're a UNC student from one of these universities, and it's not all of them.
It's just UNC Chapel Hill.
UNC Chapel Hill,
UNC
'cause-
Chapel.
so not all of them are digital in the UNC system.
Yeah, because
But more than Chapel Hill are,
I
but
know,
not all are.
I think it's more than just UNC Chapel Hill, but I might be wrong with that.
Here you come into a situation though. If I get a digital ID from a university, I might not even be from this country.
Yeah. But.
And there's no way to check that with a digital ID.
The ID, well.
You still are not gonna check it with
Yeah,
a
yeah.
license either.
Yeah, it's
We
not
can't check it.
different. Yeah, it's not, what the ID does says that you're who you say you are, not,
Reasonable resemblance
it
to the
is
person.
not evidence of where you live.
Mhm.
And they would have
Yeah.
had to register to vote.
Yeah.
In
Exactly,
order to be-
unless they're voting provisionally.
Yeah, the residency is determined because you registered to vote and they have verified that residency. The fact that the person that walks in and says, I want to vote, and my name is Mark Payne. Oh, prove that you're Mark Payne, guy who just walked in. That's where the ID comes in.
Because we can't look at the address
Yeah,
on the ID.
but the problem is, if the person was from Yugoslavia as a student, they've got an ID, they walk in and they say, I'm registered to vote. They show the ID, it doesn't say, I'm from Yugoslavia.
No,
No,
Yeah, but they're not
Your
gonna be
driver's
able to
license
vote.
doesn't either.
but the
But the
registration,
license doesn't.
Like, your
either.
license doesn't say where you was born.
That's another problem, because see, that was discussed by me and a US senator in 1988. Senator John Tower, he appointed me to a senatorial commission. And that was one of the things we were discussing. All IDs should say date of birth, place of birth.
yeah, and
Citizen or
and
non-citizen.
apparently those discussions didn't come to fruition to require that
Like
because,
blew up
yeah,
months later after making a proposal.
yeah, so.
If it says Yugoslavia, it's no good anyway, because there is no Yugoslavia.
Yeah, that's right.
That's true.
That's what I'm
it's not any
saying.
longer.
No.
I use that as an example, because I know it doesn't exist. Could have been.
But I think this goes to the example or to the statement I made. I think it's great for all board members to attend the training to see how the poll workers are trained. They can't they're not supposed to check the address on that driver's license. They're only looking at the image to see if it reasonably resembles Mark Payne.
Yeah.
And much less where they're from or where they were born, that's just not.
Yeah,
That's
Within the
one of
law.
Problems, right?
Oh, it
there,
is.
voting.
Yeah.
There's, the voter ID should have date, place of birth. Which will tell you.
But the place of birth does not mean you're not a citizen.
Naturalized citizen,
There you
it should say date, place, country of birth, naturalized citizen. Simple as that.
But
And
the
that-
state legislature didn't put that into the law whenever they made it.
Right.
Uh,
They're probably not too bright.
And our
Because that is as simple as it could get. You put it right on the driver's license, date, place of birth. Citizen, that would tell citizenship. And if they're naturalized citizen, they could have the date, place, country naturalized.
what compounds it too is the federal government has not done anything.
But I'm just saying, they're making it so complex when it could be a lot simpler.
Sure.
It's the North Carolina legislature that controls the laws that we operate under
I
here,
understand, that. I understand.
not federal.
No,
It's
I
North
understand.
Carolina legislature.
But even if it's North Carolina legislature, all legislatures could do that. They could say, listen, this was what the driver's license has to say. Date, place of birth, citizen, which would denounce citizenship. And the second thing, if they're outside of the country, date, place of naturalization.
Continue on, Mr. Payne.
Yeah, and so that's, and that's what the crux of that lawsuit is, says, the plaintiffs are asserting that the use of a non-physical ID is contrary to this, to the current statutes. And editorializing probably more than I should. The statute just uses the word card. And the plaintiffs are saying, it says card implies that it's the physical thing.
It could be a digital card.
And I think that's,
That might be how it goes, or
one could call that a very narrow definition of the word card. The statute doesn't say there's one place where it talks about a physical card, but it's talking about a specific physical card. I think it's specifically referring to driver's license. And it says physical driver's license. And it also says you can't have a picture of an ID is not acceptable. But this UNC ID is not a picture of an ID that exists somewhere else, it is the ID. So, so that's when I do think that, they're using an exceptionally narrow definition of the word card, and I don't know if the court would agree to that or not. It also has it presents the exact same issue on failure to exhaust administrative remedies, because when the state Board of Elections says we're going to take those IDs, that could be appealed. And actually, the one thing about appeal is there is a process built into an appeal that allows you to make a motion for an accelerated review process. That isn't there, that isn't specifically there with a declaratory judgment. Now, someone more cynical than I might say that these lawsuits are there to make public concerns as opposed to seek resolutions. But that would be somebody, again, more cynical than I to say that. So that's, you know, and as you all know, the lawsuits we've talked about previously, including the one that talks about the makeup of this board, is still in limbo. I periodically check and see if there's anything that's been filed in that, and I haven't seen anything. So you guys are still a 5-person board under the red book, because the lawsuit that changed, the lawsuit that challenged the statute that changed the makeup of this board is still on hold, is still stayed. So that was a lot of discussion, talked about things that may or may not happen, but you guys need to be aware that those things are out there and rolling around. It does look like the only lawsuit that's happened that's actually resolved itself is the RFK Junior. That lawsuit isn't officially over yet, but I don't see that there's anything more that can happen in it. And you guys are very familiar with that lawsuit as to what's,
We will be forever.
yes, yes. So that's all I've got. Happy to answer any questions if you got it.
I'll just say that the voter gets the packet. These are inside here with the instructions. And then this is the outer envelope that this is to be mailed back in. So if this is unsealed, we can accept it if this is sealed.
Right.
If this is unsealed, but this is sealed, we can still accept it.
Yes.
And that's how we've
And-
been.
And that latter part is the scenario that's being challenged.
One has to be sealed.
The only unacceptable was both seals were.
Correct.
Correct, right. Then we would have to spoil it and reissue.
So is that 747 and 749?
It still
749 is the
stays.
board.
Yeah.
Seven
Seven
also?
forty-nine is the change of the board, but Senate Bill 747 and Senate Bill 749, both are, makes substantial changes to the election laws and they're incorporated in this, but they are still on hold. They're still stayed pending the resolution of the current lawsuits.
What are they asking for to change?
To go to 4 members.
749 is very significant. It changes the makeup of this board. And in fact, it would technically put all you guys out of business because it dissolves the 5-person board and requires the creation of a 4-person board, 2 and 2 instead of 3 and 2.
And elected by the local constituencies.
No.
No.
The appointed by the General Assembly after recommendations from the local Board of Elections, the State Board of Elections,
To the
but not
party.
mandated. The General Assembly could
I thought it was nominated by the local parties.
nominated by the local
Yeah,
parties.
but that doesn't
But the
mean they
appointment
could
is made
select.
by the general, and the chairs is appointed by leadership in the General Assembly.
Not the governor.
Yes, not the governor. And there are other changes about the process. For example, and it's very detailed and discussion about how to break ties, because if you have a 4-person board, the statute at least anticipates there's going to be a lot more ties, and basically ties are broken by, again, the General Assembly.
Not flipping a coin, huh?
And the state board will go from 5 to 8.
That's right.
Four.
A 4 and 4 board. That's correct. This 747 makes a number of not insignificant changes to things like observers and
And also
and
assisting voters.
yeah, assistance and what goes sort of inside the polling precinct. And it also does a whole lot of non-substantial, not quite grammatical, but sort of cleanup things that are still not in place yet.
Well, 747 was actually part of that bill was the jurors.
That's right.
That was in that bill, that the non-citizen jurors would be notified by the clerk of courts, and the weekly removal due to death, due to felon, those kind of things are now weekly instead of monthly.
Yeah.
That was within.
And that's being done
747.
administratively, even though
Correct, since July 1st.
technically it's not really required. And so that, and I'm, something may have been filed that I haven't seen, but I check it every few weeks, and as of a few weeks ago, there was nothing that I could put my hands on that had been any change in those other than the court saying, we're putting that on hold.
North Carolina Supreme Court did say, I believe, that they would not take an accelerated jump over the Court of Appeals for the 749, particularly the usurping of the governor's appointment and a five-member board of elections.
Yeah.
The state Supreme Court said, no, we're not going to try to take this before the election. It must go through normal means, the Court of Appeals, and then it'll come to us after that,
That's right.
which would undoubtedly be, of course, after the election.
Yeah,
Down the road.
you guys, as a 5-member board, I would be, frankly, I would be surprised if you guys aren't meeting as a 5-member board, at least for part of 2025.
Maybe at least to the end of our term anyway.
Yeah.
End of June, maybe.
Yeah, end of June.
I fully suspect so. Yeah.
Thank you,
So
Mark.
that's all I've got.
And I'll just say too, we borrowed a nice idea from Watauga County. They put stickers on the the ballot envelope where the photo ID exception form or the photo ID can go to say, please put it here, not here. Because, you know, some of our meetings,
We've had,
we had to let the board open to see if that was in there, and we couldn't accept it in until the board. So we're hoping this will help that, but we will still have some.
Which you would treat as an anomaly, not a deficiency.
Mhm. Yep, that's right.
good example.
Okay,
Anything further?
That's all I have.
Anything further from the board?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I would like to thank all of our board members. Mr. Field was not joining us yet, but for the discussion we had in our last board meeting about verifying citizenship. Thank you all again for your patience. Appreciate Clark's letter to the board, appreciate the comments, and appreciate Mr. Payne's legal explanation of why at this stage we cannot do what I was asking if we could do. So I just want to thank everybody for indulging me in that discussion.
You have to
Thank
put
you,
up a
Jim.
lot. We're all full of Christian love.
Amen.
That's right. What I told Jerry and
Okay, if there's nothing further before this board meeting, I'd seek a motion to adjourn.
During the chair.
We have a motion to adjourn and we have a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. We've adjourned at 12:52.